Good morning, folks. Nice to have you with us as we start a brand new week on the Jeff Kuhner Show. Mike Siegel in for Jeff today and tomorrow, and he's off for a couple of days. Glad to have you with us. It's 6:06 at Boston's talk station, WRKO. And I thought we would get started on a troubling matter within the Republican Party. I think we have all seen elements and symptoms of a problem. And that is that there are some Republicans in leadership who want to be basically Democrat light. They're afraid to stand for the issues and positions and conservative values of Republicans and what Republicans ought to be. They don't want to do it. They think that by sanitizing themselves, they can gain the virtue of others across the country, and the truth is, they're going to lose the base and not gain anything. Example. We have a case of the House Majority Leader who attended his own district's meeting in Virginia. Eric Kuhner, of course, House Majority Leader, he decided he wanted a guy by the name of Linwood Cobb to be reelected as the district chairman from which the House Majority Leader, Cantor, comes from. And he supported him, endorsed him. Well, guess what? The Tea Party came along in that district. A guy named Fred Gruber, their guy, won that election. So Eric Kuhner lost, in effect, in the Republican Party because he's been too soft. Soft on immigration, soft on budgeting. Paul Ryan has done the same thing on the budget and allowed, incredibly, for military veterans who are disabled to be cut in their pensions. Disabled because of their service to this country, he agreed to have their pensions cut. It was astonishing when Paul Ryan did that. But this is the House Majority Leader who loses in his own district. Now, he's got a guy running against him by the name of Dave Bratt in a primary, and he's worried that he could lose that election as House Majority Leader in a Republican primary. Then he gets up to speak, talk to the crowd, and they start interrupting him and booing him and ranting and raving about him and his softness and getting away from Republican values and Republican issues. And in fact, he got so upset, Cantor, he said, "That's enough. We are a country of free speech, so decency's also part of this." End quote from Eric Kuhner. And that wasn't at a general meeting or a Democrat event. It was at his own Republican event in his own district. He's getting hammered. So there's one example of a Republican being pounded because he's getting too soft. Item number 2, Congressman Raul Labrador wants to cut a deal on immigration. And this is amazing. He says he would loosen the penalties on illegal immigrants if we could get more visas for foreigners who work in high-tech fields. Now, wait a minute. Why is he making that deal? We could increase the visas for people in certain fields in order to get those highly skilled people. No big deal. You don't need to cut a deal with the Democrats to do that. You don't need to have some separate issue that says we're going to reduce the penalties on illegal immigrants if you go along with increasing the visas for high-tech personnel coming into this country. Who, by the way, are going to take American jobs from Americans anyway. But the way it works right now is that if you are in this country for 6 months or more illegally and then leave, you have to wait 3 years before coming back. If you stay in this country for a year or more illegally, you have to wait 10 years before coming back to America. This guy wants to reduce that. He wants to eliminate that. We don't want those prohibitions. So if you come here illegally and leave, come on back. Now that's a Republican proposing this. Congressman Raul Labrador. You think it's going to go through the Congress? Of course, the answer is no. And yet, you have these guys, and why is he doing it? Because he thinks Republicans are going to get votes if they go soft on immigration. And how many ways does it have to be said that isn't going to happen? Anybody who supports illegal immigrants getting legal standing in this country is going to vote for Democrats no matter what. It's a Democrat issue. So the whole notion of that is false. And then, of course, the arrogance of the illegals. A guy by the name of Frank Sherry, executive director of America's Voice, says that offer doesn't come close to passing the laugh test, says Frank Sherry. He says, we want reform that includes legal status and the opportunity at citizenship for 11 million undocumented immigrants. If House Republicans are prepared to give us a vote on that, they should give us a call. My question is, why would we even be kowtowing to a guy wanting us to violate the law further by giving illegals legal status? How dare he do that? If I went to Mexico under their National Law 67, I'd wind up behind bars because every officer in Mexico is required to check on people's status as to whether they're there legally or illegally. Yet he wants Mexicans coming in here to get legal status, and he's demanding that illegals committing a crime to get here, a misdemeanor on the first offense, a felony on the second, that he wants them to get rewarded? Are you kidding me? And then Republicans are going along with that, which is also astonishing. And then you have Senator Rand Paul. He goes to a meeting with some Baptist ministers in Memphis and comes out of the meeting and says, oh, by the way, I think the Republicans are being too hard on requiring photo ID for voting. Well, wait a minute. You have to have, if you remember back in the old days when there were video stores, not many around anymore, they would always ask for photo ID. If you go to a store to buy anything with a credit card, many will ask you for your photo ID. They want to make sure it's you. So if you're going to go to a store to buy something, and they have a right to ask you for your photo ID, or they're not going to sell you the product, then why, with the cherished right to vote, should we not do the same thing and protect that right only for citizens of this country? Somebody explained to me how it's a burden on minorities to get photo ID issued by the state. If you don't have a driver's license, the state will still issue a photo ID that sanctions you and authorizes you as a citizen of that state. That's an insult to people of color to say that they don't have, it's a burden for them to get photo ID. What it really is a sham on the part of the Democrats who want illegals to vote, and the more checking with photo IDs you do, the fewer illegals can vote. And it's not about minorities at all. It's about getting illegal votes. So Rand Paul now caving in to the Democrats and saying, oh yeah, let's get rid of this idea of requiring photo ID. Well, all of those examples lead to one conclusion. The Republicans are in trouble because they're going away from their values. They don't realize that if they stick with the issues that got them where they got, guess what? They might win. And I'm concerned about the Republican Party. We already know where the Democrats are. We know they're hopeless. We know that's not going to be of any consequence or value to us. So the bottom line is, folks, do you think the Republicans are representing your views if you're a conservative effectively? Are these Republicans I just mentioned, Rand Paul, Raul Labrador, Eric Cantor, are they acting in a way that reflects what you think Republicans should be doing? I say no. I say they are sacrificing the values of the Republican Party to play games with the Democrats. And they're going to lose on that one. Absolutely lose. You play somebody else's game by their rules, you lose. Period. Glad to get your calls, comments, thoughts, and reactions. The number to Boston is 617-266-6868. And good to have you with us on the Jeff Kuhner program. Mike Siegel in at Boston's talk station WRKO. 617-266-6868. Are the Republicans behaving in a way that you want them to? And what about those examples I just gave you where they're compromising and walking away from the conservative values that got them there? Stay with us. More to come at Boston's talk station WRKO. Okay, folks, back we are. Good to be here. Mike Siegel in. Get yourself a cup of coffee. Join us for the morning. We got lots to talk about, and you're part of that process. 617-266-6868 is the number to Boston. Glad to get your calls. Is the Republican Party vacating its conservative values? Do you have fear or concern that we're becoming, in effect, a one-and-a-half-party system in this country? You got Lindsey Graham and John McCain in the Senate. McCain's already been chastised by Arizona State Republicans who voted him to be censored for not being conservative enough. I mentioned 3 members of Congress who are falling down on issues that they should stand tall on because the American people want them to, yet they're caving in because their Democrat colleagues in the Congress want them to cave in, and they're buying into it. Jeff, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at Boston's talk station, WRKO. Good morning to you.
Oh, thanks, Mike. Hey, and you just heard in the quick news there that Romney's for raising the minimum wage. What is wrong with these Republicans? Forget them. They're not conservative. They think, you know, give me a choice. If I'm a Democrat, give me a choice between a Democrat and a fake Democrat. I'm going to take the real Democrat. You know, they're not going to get voted back into office this way. They're lying to themselves, trying to be nicey nice when it should be look out for the business owner, look out for the private citizen, look out for everyone's wallet. That's what it's all about. But they don't get it. I'm not going to vote for him. I'm a conservative. I guess I'm not a Republican anymore. I guess I'm just a conservative. And that's the way it's going to be for a few years, I guess. Don't you think?
But that scares me because, and I thank you for calling. Jeff, you know what? The Republicans have a golden opportunity. We could go in for the next, and I'm sure Jeff's been doing it every day, going into all these issues that Obama has violated the Constitution on, all of this going on, and the Republicans have the ground fertile for them to win. And what are they doing? They're caving in. They don't need to cave in, and they shouldn't be caving in. Don, you're on next with Mike Siegel for Boston's talk station host Jeff Kuhner, WRKO. Good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to say I think the Republicans have to do that because there's no way they're going to get back in office. They have to thank the Democrats for saving this country, for, you know, getting us back on track, getting us jobs, caring about the middle class, not worrying about stupid scandals and, you know, things that they're just wasting taxpayer money on.
I don't know what you're talking about. We have over 20 million people unemployed, 75% of the jobs created by Barack Obama this year. Sir, I'm going to finish the point. 75% of the jobs created have been part-time jobs because companies don't want to pay Obamacare. So the jobs that are created by this administration are low-paying jobs. I thank you for calling, but the Republicans are not going to win by echoing the Democrats. It ain't going to happen, sir.
Thanking the Democrats for saving this country.
The Democrats are screwing this country, sir. Benghazi, you want to talk about Benghazi?
What have the Republicans done? What have they done? They can't even win anything and do anything other than say no.
Well, because what would you want to say yes to, sir?
Is that what you want to do?
You want to say yes to the fact that
that's what you want people to vote for is to get somebody in there and say, oh, you don't agree with me, so I should shut the government down.
No, what I want to do is have a party that says we're going to follow the Constitution. I thank you for the call. Good to talk to you, sir. 617-266-6868. It's a waste of time. He's been on before, even when I've been here. I don't know how Jeff deals with him. Steve, you're next. Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Mike. How you doing?
Great.
Good. My question is, I mean, where are they getting their advice? From the DNC? I mean, it's ridiculous. Why do Republicans go after votes from people that, quite frankly, are never going to vote for them? They're going for what? The minority vote by doing things like this? It's completely stupid because they're not going to vote Republican. And the minorities that are going to vote Republican are going to vote Republican anyways. All they're going to do is they're going to separate themselves from real conservatives, and we're not going to vote for them because, quite frankly, they're distancing themselves from us by kissing Democratic butt.
Well, you've said it all. I mean, you said it a lot more succinctly than I did. And I'll tell you something, Steve. Mitt Romney had 3 million people sit home who were conservatives, and he could have won the election. So why don't the Republicans look in the mirror and ask themselves, why did that happen? It's because people felt that the party wasn't being reflective of conservative values. That's why.
Exactly. Like, who was it that said, I didn't leave the Republican Party left me?
Ronald Reagan said that about the Democrats.
Exactly, the Democrats. That's right. Sorry about it. But, I mean, that's exactly what it is. I mean, you got to go for the votes you're going to get. Don't go for the votes that are never going to come your way, regardless of what you do.
I appreciate it, and I thank you. And it's just common sense. They're not going to get votes from minorities no matter what they do as Republicans. Rand Paul's not going to get the minority vote because he says don't have voter ID or photo ID for voting. And why shouldn't you have photo ID? There's nothing racial about that. It's whether you can prove that you're a citizen. Mike at 617-266-6868. You're next at WRKO. Good morning.
Yeah, first of all, Mike, that screwball that claimed the Democrats saved this country and are saving it is probably a union thug putting on his work boots and going to go out and work today. I know all about these union guys. He sounds like one of those guys. You know, anything for the party, you know. The fact of the matter is, if the Republicans continue this downslide in this capitulation to this amnesty, which I feel is the most important issue in American society and the future of our country in the horizon. If they capitulate and go for amnesty and it's passed, well, that guy that believes in the Democrats saving the country, it'll be the final nail on this coffin. I can see what's going on out here, Mike. Go into the cities where guys that used to be roofers and not union guys, just regular guys that want to work. They can't find work because they're being underpriced by illegal immigrants. And I'll say it, and by the way, the papacy and all these other people are talking from the pulpits that it's immoral not to accept illegal immigration and knock down our borders. We're surrounded, Mike.
Well, you know what? Let's see if we take a couple 100,000 Americans down to Mexico and see what happens. Every one of us will wind up behind bars. Will the Catholic Church then protect us going down to Mexico when we get arrested? What are they going to do then?
Well, Mike, the fact of the matter is, like the Democrats, they need the illegal immigrants in their pews because good Catholics, the ones that believe in the dogma, are leaving the Catholic faith by the millions because of not only the pedophiles, but the liberal philosophies they advocate. We're leaving the Catholic faith. So they need the illegal immigrants just like the Democrats need them. Thanks.
I appreciate that, sir, and I thank you. And, you know, if we cave in, I mean, what other country has borders that are as porous as ours, where we don't even take the time and energy to try and stop the illegal immigration? Not because the guys on the border don't want to do it. It's because they're being told not to do it by an administration that refuses to enforce the law. But my simple point is, we already know that's happening with Obama and the Democrats. Why are Republicans buying into that? Why is Boehner talking about doing an immigration bill? And then he turns around, talks to somebody else, and says no. He's very confusing, to say the least. Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner. Jeff's off today. Our number is 617-266-6868. We go next to Phil. You're on the air at WRKO, Phil. Good morning.
Good morning, Mike. This national debt keeps growing, and it's killing the lower classes. We got to put an end to the spending of this maniac in the White House. This national debt, trillions and trillions of dollars, are really killing the lower classes. We can't afford it. Somebody has to get up and say what's happening to the lower classes. It's because of this big debt that he's incurring, this Obama.
Then let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
We know that about Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Chuck Schumer. Yeah. We know it about them. Why are the Republicans caving in? I just made the point earlier. Paul Ryan, who was chairing the budget committee with Senator Patty Murray, about as left-wing as you can find from Washington State, they were the two people putting together a budget, and Paul Ryan agreed for this to go through the roof in terms of the national debt ceiling. He also agreed, as one of the elements, to reduce the pensions of military people who had been disabled by their service to this country. Oh. That's what now. How he's another one. I mentioned the other three. How about Paul Ryan? How about John McCain? How about Lindsey Graham? I'm concerned about the Republicans giving up their party and giving up the people who believe in them.
What about Rubio? What about Mark Rubio from Florida, or the other Bush there, Jeb Bush?
I'm glad you brought them up.
Who follows the conservative role? Otherwise, we're going to lose everything.
I'm glad you brought both of them up.
Yeah.
Marco Rubio just said yesterday he's capable now of being president.
Yeah, he got percentage-wise, he was leading the party for a while. I hope he extends his issues, because somebody has to follow the conservative view, otherwise this country is gone.
Well, he was the one who put together the Senate immigration bill with the Democrats, which would give up this country's borders, wouldn't give us any security, but would make these 11 million people legal. Well, that's the problem with Marco Rubio. And if you talk about Jeb Bush,
the illegals to go back to their country, and the illegals were getting money and killing the party, killing the Republican Party. The illegals keep coming in, and that's bad news for us.
There's bad news for the country. Thank you, sir. Good to talk to you. Listen, the bottom line is, he mentioned Marco Rubio, who gave up on immigration. I interviewed Marco Rubio last year at the Federation for American Immigration Reform annual Hold Their Feet to the Fire. You no doubt have heard Howie Carr on this radio station broadcasting from there. I saw him, in fact, at the last one a few weeks ago. And I interviewed Rubio and just put it right to him. You seem to care more about the illegal aliens than you do about others, the people living in southern Arizona who live with fear in their lives. What about them? And he just had no answer for it. Well, then you have, he mentions Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush calls it an act of love for illegals to come into this country. Well, no thanks. It's not an act of love toward me. It's not an act of love toward the guy whose job he's taking, is it? And those are American citizens whose jobs are being taken. The Republican Party has to get back on track. I think it's losing its way. What do you think? 617-266-6868. Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at Boston's talk station, WRKO 630. More coming on the other side.
American people care about jobs. They care about their families and their education of their children and the health of their families and that. Somebody said to me yesterday, either people have gotten tired of Benghazi or they never knew about it in the first place. So let's not be accomplices to this diversionary tactic. It's all subterfuge because they don't want to talk about what our responsibilities are here. And we have to make a judgment as to how dangerous we think they can be with the misrepresentation of the facts of the committee. The Speaker says he doesn't want it to go that place. I hope that that's how it will go. And when I speak with him, we'll see. But again, we've been there, done that. Why are we doing this again? Why are we doing this again? I'm going to have to go to the floor and vote because the time is close.
That is the airhead Nancy Pelosi. And if John Boehner caves into her, or if the Republicans cave into her on Benghazi, it would be an outrage. We're talking, first of all, about the Republicans compromising, giving up the ghost, giving up conservative values in immigration with photo ID for voting. Do you folks want to see people bring their photo ID to the polls when they vote to verify that they're American citizens? Does that make sense to you? Does it make sense to you that we've enforced the laws on illegal immigration and not let people in and secure the borders before we even talk about giving people amnesty? Securing the borders has to come first. These are issues that are crucial. And we also have, by the way, the House Majority Leader, Eric Cantor, getting booed at his own district in Virginia. And his guy for district re-election as chairman lost. Now, the Republicans are caving in from within, even though the fertile territory for them to win in November is obvious. But they're not taking advantage of it by sticking to the conservative values that made them what they are. Danielle, you're on with Mike Siegel at Boston's talk station, WRKO, for Jeff Kuhner. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you, Mike? Thank you very much for taking my call. All I want to say is, as long as the people of the United States think that there's a party of the opposition, that there is conservative in the leadership, we're gonna fail and we're gonna lose. There is 535 people who commit treason. I'm a foreigner. I came here legally. I always been a good citizen. I work. I pay my taxes. I'm good to my neighbor. I'm a good Christian citizen. I've been fooled, but I'm not going to be fooled anymore. I believe in the people of this country who are now starting to understand that the biggest fraud ever happened in this country, they all commit treason. The House, the Senate, the President. We have been taking over. This is a quiet coup in the United States. And the people are waking up finally. Thank you, Mike.
Waking up how? By the country going down the drain? The country is losing itself. The values have gone away. They've extinguished. The country as it is today is not what it was, many of us remember, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and before that. It's totally different. The country's been absconded with on the far left. Walter, you're on WRKO with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for taking my call. This voter ID thing, I just don't get it. It's what the Constitution is all about. It's all about knowing who is voting and who shouldn't be voting. I went to CVS to buy a $10 money order. I had to show a picture ID, specifically a picture ID to buy a $10 money order with cash.
Then if you have to show that, Walter, why do we have even a debate about whether we should do it for voting is so precious? Do we just let how do we let anybody walk into the booth? And then the question is, how is that a burden on anybody to have a photo ID? You have to have it for all kinds of reasons.
And Mike, beyond that, if it's a problem of cost for these poor folks to get a picture ID from their state, then just have the state absorb the cost and just walk in, get your picture taken, show proper identification, and you've got a picture ID. What do they charge right now? $15 or $25? The state of Massachusetts is rolling in money from what they're collecting in fees and fines or fees at the registry, and their costs don't compare. I think it's 1/10 of what they're taking in is what their costs of operating are.
Well, see, the problem is, you see, there's an agenda here, because the Democrats will tell you, Eric Holder will tell you, for example, the Attorney General, that we don't like this burden you place on the poor to have a photo ID. Well, wait a minute. Number one, we're talking about voting. It's not a burden. It's an affirmative responsibility for each of us to prove that we are, in fact, a citizen of this country and of the state and of the district in which we are voting. I have a registration card, a voter registration card. I show it when I go to do my voting. Everybody should have to do the same. And the photo ID to show that you're the person on the card, on the voter registration card. It's not rocket science.
My question, not to interrupt you, but my question would be, when they say it's a burden, what is the burden?
The burden is that they want illegals to vote. That's the burden. And if you force, look, if they're going to say that African Americans are burdened by this, African Americans ought to feel the height of being insulted, because they just as easily can get photo ID as anybody else, and they already have it, no doubt. It's about getting illegals to vote. The looser the system is, the easier it is to get more people to vote. And the people who are poor coming in from other countries obviously are going to vote for Democrats. It's about a Democrat agenda to get more votes.
Let's hope for the best, I guess.
I appreciate it, Walter, and I thank you very much. Our number is 617-266-6868, number to Boston. And Mike Siegel in for Jeff Kuhner, who's off today. Good to have you with us at Boston's talk station, WRKO. We move along to Bill, who's next. Bill, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are we doing today?
I'm ready to roll, sir.
You are? Well, let me tell you. You know, our good buddy Ronald Reagan, he was for amnesty. He did amnesty, you know, and then I hear all the other Republicans out whining and complaining. But the guy who was the head of the conservatives, he did an amnesty package. And, you know, it seemed like, he did it, but these other guys don't want to make a deal. And that's what Reagan at least knew how to do. He knew how to make a deal.
Well, you know, but I'll tell you this, he officially and verbally recognized and expressed later in his life that he regretted making that deal. That was the bottom line. He regretted it. He did do it. And we didn't get the border security we should have gotten. But, you know, the last president to enforce border security was Dwight Eisenhower. It's the last time any president really enforced our border security. That was the bottom line. We also, I think, have to realize that if we're going to have a two-party system, then the other party has to stand up for itself. Why are Republicans embarrassed to stand for positions that, frankly, most Americans hold? If you were to say to an average person, do you want to have responsible budgeting in government? You want to have balanced budgets? Spend what you receive and no more than that. Do you want to have free markets so people can go out and start companies and entrepreneurship? Do you want to have constitutional compliance? Do you want to have responsibility in government, limited government, to do only what the Constitution says the feds can do? I mean, most people are going to say that all of that makes sense. And that's what Republicans were supposed to be founded upon in terms of the values that the Republicans are supposed to hold. When you hear them talking now, whether it's on immigration or photo ID or any of these other issues, you wind up seeing this compromising, vacillating, back and forth, no standards, no system of believing in what those people who support the Republican Party want those officials to believe in. Does John Boehner represent your views as a conservative? Let me ask you this question. What are your criteria for a candidate? What is it that you believe a candidate should stand for in the Republican Party that you would be willing to vote for? What are the issues most important to you? And I want to get your thoughts, calls, comments, and reactions. And with that, should Republicans be compromising with Democrats? Should Republicans compromise on immigration, on photo ID, on the national debt ceiling, on budgeting, without getting cuts, giving tax increases? Should they be compromising with Democrats doing that? My answer is no. What's yours? 617-266-6868. Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Here we are, folks. Good to be back with you. Coming up to 6:52 at Boston's talk station, WRKO. Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner, and a good morning to you. Talking about the Republican Party, what do you want to see in Republican candidates? What values do you want them to stand for? Is there anybody out there standing for them? Jeb Bush has walked away. Marco Rubio has walked away. John McCain has walked away. Mitt Romney's walking away, supporting big increases in minimum wage. That's not going to do anything for the productivity of the economy. I mean, where are these guys going? Raul Labrador wants to sanitize immigration, cut a deal with the Democrats. It is becoming a bigger problem for Republicans within the party than it is in opposing Democrats. Democrats are handing Republicans fertile territory to win, and Republicans are just battling internally and losing. Start with Dave, first of all. Dave, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Hi, how are you, Jeff?
Good to be with you, sir.
You betcha. Look at 2 points on the Republicans. The first thing I'm looking for is, I don't care if there's 5 or 6 guys debating. I want every one of them to say that, irrespective of who wins or doesn't win the nomination, I intend to support totally the Republican candidate. No questions asked. Okay?
Well, you just heard Rush do a commentary, and he was, coincidentally, I had no idea he was going to do that. He said the same thing I'm saying here. He said Republicans ought to find a conservative candidate to run for president. He said it in the commentary 2-3 minutes ago.
Oh, is that right? I didn't hear him.
Well, he did. But that's what I've been saying all morning, is that Republicans are not standing for Republican values. What's the difference between John McCain and Chuck Schumer? Is there any difference between them?
No, there isn't. As far as I'm concerned, the Republicans, if they take on somebody like Schumer, they're done.
However, I appreciate it. You know, Dave, the bottom line is they got to have a Republican candidate that stands for conservative values, and I'm glad Rush made that point in this program. Frank, you're on with Mike Siegel at WRKO for Jeff Kuhner. Good morning.
Mike, good morning. It's a pleasure. Hey, look, real quickly, I got 6 points that Republicans need to stay the course on. 1, strong national defense with the proper treatment of veterans. 2, financial responsibility, a balanced budget along with a simplified tax system. 3, fewer regulations. Let's let the free market and the business-friendly environment take hold. 4, secure the borders and enforce the immigration laws on the books. Let's not reinvent the wheel. 5, systems that work. Welfare, EBT cards, voter registration, health card. We're sick of all the inefficiency, graft, and corruption. And finally, 6, empower the individual, families, and business, not government bureaucracy. They will win on that ticket. Thanks a lot, Mike.
I appreciate it. And somebody out there, I defy anybody listening to tell me that what he just said is radical. Because the left-wing Democrats will tell you that's radical right-wing extremism. And yet it's common sense. What he just described would make this country operate far more effectively on behalf of the American people instead of on behalf of some agenda that Barack Obama and his crowd has. All right, Patrick, you're on WRKO with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I just want to make people aware that there's currently a quote-unquote Safe Driving Act in the Joint Committee on Transportation in the Massachusetts House, and people need to call their own legislators and also call the people on this committee to oppose this. It's a quote-unquote Safe Driving Act, but what it really is, it's a driver's license for illegal aliens. And there is some opposition even from some of the Democrats on the committee, but this is something that people need to call in about and have turned back. This is something that's just dangerous, and It's just an ID card. There's going to be some slight minor differences, but there's all types of things that can go wrong with this.
Well, you make a great point. There are about a dozen states. It's amazing to me. We had about 48 states, only New Mexico and Washington State were the only ones that gave illegals driver's licenses. Now there's about a dozen states more that are doing it. Why? It made sense. First we go in this country to following the law. Why are you going to give an illegal alien a driver's license? Why?
Well, it's very dangerous in this state because there's a big push by the illegal immigration people to have this to happen. And John Fernandez from Milford, he's a Democrat from Milford. He sees this as completely wrong. And that's the area where Matthew Denise, the young man who was killed by the illegal alien, he says this would not have made any difference in that case.
I appreciate it, sir, and I thank you very much. And you're right that this needs to be stopped, and I hope people will do that. Bruce, you're next with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Hey, Mike. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you, sir.
One of my most important points on who I would vote for, and I'm going to vote definitely conservative. I'm a radical, as they say, but I'm just watching the TV with the media and everything, how they want us to go over and free these young girls over in Nigeria, I believe it is, or
it's Nigeria, yes,
Nigeria. I mean, hey, I feel strongly for them. For those children, but they're not our children. We got 750 veterans that have committed suicide since the first of the year, and they're worried about that.
The point. Look, they can't have it both ways. I thank you for calling, and it's a great point you make. Take care of our own. The fact is, Chuck Schumer, the senator from New York, is outraged about these guys taking these girls. But guess what, Schumer? They're Al-Qaeda types. Their organization is with Al-Qaeda. And you know what? They are guys who are Islamic fundamentalists. But you don't want to call them that. You're too cowardly to call them that. Let's go to Brenda next. Brenda, you're on with Mike Siegel at WRKO for Jeff Kuhner. Good morning. Got about a minute.
Good morning, and thanks for filling in for Jeff. I just wanted to make it really simple. The reason that the Republicans can't seem to get out of their own way is the fact that they're so afraid. It's the fear factor. They're so afraid that they're going to be painted in a limelight that is not going to look good. So therefore, they're just going to join them. The fear of either being called a racist because they disagree with the ideology of the administration has got them in a headlock. So therefore, they're just going to fold. Rather than stand up to this administration, this thug administration, they're just going to fold them. And it's
I appreciate that.
Unbelievable to me.
Brenda, you make the point well. We'll pick that up when we come back. Anybody wants to respond to what Brenda had to say or what we're talking about here about Republicans being cowardly? Republican leaders today are cowardly. 617-266-6868. Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO.
News at the top and bottom. Talk in between.
And you and I are here to tell them that's enough.
This is AM 680 WRKO, Boston.
We also have Nancy Pelosi saying, we don't want to talk about Benghazi. Well, why not? We'll get to that in a couple of moments. I have some thoughts about that as well. But first of all, Kevin wants to respond to our last call of Brenda in the last hour. Kevin, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Mike, and thanks ever so much for picking up the handle, especially at such I don't think the sun's up yet out there in Seattle. Welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
You got it. And picking up with Brenda, saying one thing, here it is, how on both houses, and especially the Republicans, they just acquiesce and capitulate. But here, even at home, on our local level, if we speak out in any way, Mike, what happened on this day last week, at Guilford, New Hampshire, a parent happens to be an Attorney Bayer, William Bayer, spoke out against the curriculum of Common Core, a sexually explicit book. It was labeled 19 Minutes by an author, Jody, a New Hampshire resident, but it was so bad. The parents were not notified. His daughter of 14 years of age, you and I could not disseminate or hand out any of that material, whether it be here in Massachusetts or New Hampshire, without being charged. He spoke up. He was arrested. I've been to these town hall meetings. It's like walking into a SWAT team, through a SWAT team, and when you sit down, who in their right mind wants to get up to the podium and speak out, no matter what it is, if it's a local issue or something on the federal mandate? It's unbelievable how this is why we cannot. It seems to be any one of us cannot go against the grain, Michael.
Well, I don't buy that. I think that if people stand up, other people will follow. I appreciate the call, but I don't agree with the premise. I think this country has to go back on the right path. We're off track. And I think what was proven when the Tea Party Express was created, wasn't created by some big monolithic group, some cabal. It was created by a woman named Amy Kramer. She had been a flight attendant at Delta Airlines. And she just went online on Facebook and Twitter and some of these social media and complained about the national debt ceiling and the imbalanced budgets and not raising enough revenue to pay the bills of this country, and that we're going down the economic drain. She got tons of response from people online, and it led to creation of the Tea Party Express. Not because there was a radical agenda. The Tea Parties are made up of mainstream Americans. It's the people on the left who are taking this country off its track. And no, I don't agree that you can't stand up and be counted. You don't like what's books are in the schools, and you got to stand up and say so. If it's a provocative book, maybe it shouldn't be there, or parents should give their permission for it to be there. But don't tell me that we have to be quiet. I don't buy that. Jim, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at Boston's talk station, WRKO. Good morning.
What about Ted Cruz?
Ted Cruz is one of the few that I would say, yes, he's been consistent.
Yes, and Jeff Kuhner likes him too, because you can interview him. He's very conservative, and he wants to follow the path going to colleges and talking to the students there. He's pushing his agenda across. I think he's the only one I trust.
If you would,
and Obama, was a socialist guy. Anyways, he wants socialism in this country. You know that.
I understand that, but really, look, Obama's a lost cause. He's also on his way out, Jim, as far as that goes.
His agenda across Cruz and make sure that it gets caught in a debate. That's the only way you go against this guy, Obama.
There's one other guy beside Ted Cruz that comes to mind, and that's Rick Santorum.
Yeah, he's another one that could do the job. I've been following him too, but Ted Cruz is on going to colleges and talking to students. I think that's the only way.
The other one is the governor of Wisconsin, who broke the labor unions in the state.
Oh, that's Walker.
Scott Walker, yeah.
He's another one. But, the one who's getting the ideas across, Ted Cruz is pushing his agenda very strongly. I like him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I appreciate it, and I thank you. But, if you go through some of the other guys, and thanks for the call, Jim, appreciate it. I mean, you look at Marco Rubio, you look at Jeb Bush, you look at John McCain, Lindsey Graham. You go down the list of these Rand Paul potential candidates, and what you find is an unwillingness to be consistent. I mean, Jeb Bush came out with a book in which he said we should not give a path to citizenship to illegal aliens. Right after the book came out, within a month, he was talking about giving them a path to citizenship. And you talk about Rand Paul, all of a sudden he doesn't like showing photo ID when you go to vote because he met with some black pastors who said it's a burden. Or you have Lindsey Graham, who doesn't want to enforce the borders effectively. I mean, what are we talking about here? It becomes absolutely irrational to follow these ideas because, in the end, any of these Republican candidates for president as they come out who supports compromise with the Democrats on these issues is a loser and should be a loser. The Republican primaries is where you have to win. You can't win a general election unless you get through the primaries. And I would suggest to you that Republicans are fed up with this vacillating. The proof in the pudding was the House Majority Leader, Eric Cantor, went back to his district in Virginia, got booed and booed and booed some more the other night, and his candidate for district chairman lost the election. that was a symbolic loss for Eric Cantor. So let's talk about taking this country back to the direction it needs to be going. And Ted Cruz would be a guy who could do that. I think Scott Walker, because he's already in an administrative office as governor of Wisconsin, would be another one. And a guy who's already administering a state is pretty much ready to administer the federal government, certainly more so than somebody in the Senate, which is a policy body. Either one of those I would take in a heartbeat over what's out there. I would take Condoleezza Rice, would be, I think, a brilliant president. But we've got to stand up for people who stand for values, is my point. And I'd like to know from you who you believe are the kinds of candidates that you would support. And what is it that you want them to say when the presidential campaign comes around? What do you want them to say in terms of where they want to take this country? For that matter, where they want to take this state, if it's for United States Senate or for the governor's office. Our number to Boston is 617-266-6868. Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner. It's good to be here. We'll come back and listen to what Nancy Pelosi had to say on Benghazi as well. Much more coming at Boston's talk station, WRKO. Stay with us.
American people care about jobs. They care about their families and their education of their children and the health of their families and that. Somebody said to me yesterday, either people have gotten tired of Benghazi or they never knew about it in the first place. So let's not be accomplices to this diversionary tactic. It's all subterfuge because they don't want to talk about what our responsibilities are here.
That's a bunch of baloney, Nancy Pelosi. Number one, let me very briefly raise the points about why Benghazi needs to have hearings. First of all, for months before this attack on 9/11 of 2012 happened, both Ambassador Christopher Stevens, I should say, and others at that mission in Benghazi asked the State Department for help, security forces. Instead of increasing, they decreased security forces. In August, a team of 8 security specialists was moved out of Benghazi. Why was that done? And then the next month, September, is when the attack took place. Number 2, England, the British government, and the American Red Cross both pulled their people out of that Benghazi area because they didn't believe they could support militarily and protect them militarily from harm. So they pulled out. Why didn't we pull out? First of all, because Obama didn't want to look like a coward, so he stayed there. But he didn't give them support militarily to protect them. And then on the night of the attack, Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta at the time said, well, the president came by for 15 to 30 minutes to talk with us at the National Security Team, and then he went to bed. And, of course, the next day he went to Las Vegas raising money. Somebody tell me why that's not a dereliction of duty, a reckless disregard for human life, and maybe criminal negligence on the part of the president as commander-in-chief who has a legal responsibility to protect American sovereign territory, which Benghazi was. The mission was American sovereign territory, and its people were to be protected by the commander-in-chief. He failed miserably. He didn't send any air cover during the attack. He didn't send any troops during the attack because he didn't want it to look like a terrorist attack because of political reasons. We know that from Robert Gates, the Secretary of Defense at the time, who wrote a book about the fact that he was in a room with Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, and what they were concerned about was the political aspect of this. That politically it would look bad if there was a terrorist attack on his watch and would harm him in his re-election. So he allowed 4 people to die. And then they lied and called it an anti-Muslim video. And then, and of course it wasn't that. We know that now. It was obviously a terrorist attack all the way. And then Eleanor Clift, who I guess I'll excuse her. Maybe she's senile. Maybe she's getting dementia. Maybe she's getting Alzheimer's. But she actually said, I would like to point out Ambassador Stevens was not murdered. He died of smoke inhalation in the safe room in that CIA installation. Let me hear that from Eleanor Clift if we can.
What happened to the
Every media organization has investigated this to death. This animates the right wing of the Republican Party, and I would like to point out that Ambassador Stevens was not murdered. He died of smoke inhalation in the safe room in that CIA installation.
I don't think that's
it changes. I think that is
I think I've heard a drastically different story from people who are also in the know about that. So I don't think it was
attack, Eleanor. He was murdered in a terrorist
It was an opportunistic terrorist attack that
opportunistic that grew
out of that video.
The video had nothing to do with it.
There There were demonstrations across the world
in
because of
Benghazi,
that.
not in Benghazi. There was no video related to it at all.
It's still opportunistic, and it's still a CIA. And if you're going to put people on trial, we should put David Petraeus on trial,
Well, bring him
not
in.
Hillary Clinton.
He should testify too.
Please,
nobody's going to answer those
please
subpoenas.
relinquish. We're going to be returning to this subject, I'm sure, repeatedly over the next 6 months.
Can you believe Eleanor Clift? Luckily, Pat Buchanan was there. It's unbelievable. What do you mean it wasn't a terrorist attack except for the anti-Muslim video? That's already been shown to be a fraud. And he died of smoke inhalation? Are you kidding? All right, we go to Bob next. Bob, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure Eleanor Clift out.
Well, the reason I called was to nominate Trey Gowdy for vice presidential candidate or even someday president, because that guy, I've been talking about him for a year now, and he really impresses me. He's a former prosecutor, and he seems to have his act together.
Yeah, he's from North Carolina, of course, and was a prosecutor, and is going to be, as you know, the chair of this select committee on Benghazi. So he'll do a good job with that. So yeah, he's a good choice, but he needs a little more experience. I think what Scott Walker did in Wisconsin demonstrates leadership. Ted Cruz has been demonstrating strong leadership, as the caller said. But you're right, Trey Gowdy is down the road going to be he'd be a nice candidate for vice president. I agree with you.
Yeah, well, maybe if he had as much experience as Barack Obama had when he became president, he would have the job.
That's amazing, isn't it? Nobody wants to talk about that.
Yeah, right.
I appreciate the call, sir. How does Eleanor Clift say that they ought to go after Petraeus? Barack Obama's a commander-in-chief, you idiot, Eleanor Clift. He's supposed to protect those people. And don't go after Hillary Clinton. She refused to send extra security to Benghazi when it was requested by the ambassador who worked for her, Christopher Stevens, and he's dead because of it. What are you talking about? They didn't do their job that they were supposed to do. That's why these investigations are necessary. Our number, if you want to respond to Eleanor Clift, feel free. What do we do about her? Maybe nothing. 617-266-6868. John, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Good morning. I hate to bring you back to the subject of Rand Paul, but in the article I read yesterday about Rand Paul's rants, he also brought up the subject of convicted felons, and they don't have the right to vote.
Yeah, he wants them to have the right to vote.
Right. Now, he wants to change that. He wants convicted felons to have the right to vote.
That's correct.
He stated that the reason for it is that most of them are black. That was also part of the article that you mentioned earlier. And I think that's important for the public to know.
You're right about that. But here's the point, too, though. When he met in Memphis with those black pastors, he came out of the meeting because they have just inundated with him this thing about photo ID. So he came out and talked about that as being a burden. But then when he went to a Republican meeting across town a little bit later in the day, he started talking about this felons voting. He didn't even bring up the thing about the voter ID.
Yeah. But I said, and the other thing that bothers me, he also has endorsed the minority leader in the Senate rather than a conservative Republican.
And that's another problem. Mitch McConnell has a primary election that is going to give him big problems to begin with.
Right, but again, Rand Paul wants him back in there, apparently.
Well, they're both from Kentucky, and I guess he wants his buddy there. But you're right. Rand Paul isn't what he appeared to be, is he? He certainly
he's not. He's not a conservative Republican in my book.
And Jeb Bush isn't either.
No, very definitely no.
Jeb Bush could have had a shot if he would stick to some principles like his brother George. Maybe he would have gotten somewhere, but I don't think he's got it. All right, thank you for calling, sir. Let's go to Carol next. Carol, hi, you're on with Mike Siegel in for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning to you.
Good morning. I was just calling to say I'm a big supporter of Ted Cruz. He'll protect borders, he'll lower the deficit, he'll reel in the budget, and he'll be for the taxpayer, the working class. I feel like if the Democrats get in, that we need to start to look at. If they want to support all this, let them volunteer to pay it. Don't make the regular working class pay for it.
The thing is, if you take more taxes from the middle class, there will not be a middle class. If you increase the minimum wage, look, in Seattle, they started it. They're making it $15 an hour. Now, you tell me about a small business having to pay $15 an hour, let's say at a fast food restaurant, for people serving meals. They can't afford to do that. They, believe it or not, work on very close profits in those businesses.
Why not let the people that stand for it then be the ones that pay for it? Why force everyone who doesn't support it? Let it be volunteer then.
Because the people on the left like big government controlling society. They want their ideology to be imposed on everybody. Never mind free markets, they don't matter. You know, really what it comes down to is the difference between people having freedom and people being controlled by government. That's really the option we have. And my problem is, you got too many Republicans who are buying into being controlled instead of doing the independent thing like Ted Cruz, Scott Walker, Trey Gowdy's another good one. A few of those people are out there.
Yep.
I appreciate it. I thank you, Carol, for being on the program. 617-266-6868. Anybody want to take on Eleanor Clift? She says that Ambassador Stevens died of smoke inhalation, not from a terrorist attack. Good to have you with us. Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at Boston's talk station WRKO. Your calls are next at 7:30.
What happened to the
Every media organization has investigated this to death. This animates the right wing of the Republican Party. And I would like to point out that Ambassador Stevens was not murdered. He died of smoke inhalation in the safe room in that CIA installation.
I don't think that's fact,
but it changes. I think that is...
No, I think I've heard a drastically different story from people who are also in the know about that. So I don't think it was
an attack, Eleanor. He was murdered in a terrorist
attack. It was an opportunistic...
Well, there she is, Eleanor Clift. You want to respond, feel free to do it. It's just a head shaker. But, you know, the notion that somehow we don't need to investigate Benghazi is BS all the way through. It's poppycock and it's balderdash as well. Because we want to know why there were not enough security forces there to defend the mission in Benghazi in the first place when there were pleas from the ambassador and others at that mission. No one's ever answered that question. Why didn't Obama send? Why didn't Hillary Clinton send? Why didn't Chuck Hagel send people there to defend them? Number two, why did Britain and the American Red Cross pull out? Because they knew they couldn't defend their people. And why did we stay? Because Obama wanted to look strong. That's why. And by pulling out, he would have looked weak. And then, of course, when we find out that Bob Gates, the Secretary of Defense, says, oh, by the way, in his book, he says Hillary and Obama were concerned about the political fallout of what would happen at Benghazi, so the anti-Muslim video story made sense for them. We want to know about that. We want that exposed publicly. So when Eleanor Clift says, oh, it's been investigated, that's baloney. It hasn't been investigated with answers to those questions. All Hillary Clinton can say is, what does it matter now why they died? Are you kidding? Joe, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at Boston's talk station WRKO. Good morning.
How are you?
I'm frustrated with Eleanor Clift and that left-wing wacko crowd.
I know it. I just want to know one thing, Mike. Why can't they do this? Why can't they take all the four families of them poor boys that were shot, okay, that were killed, tortured, and why can't they bring them to this meeting, and when they get Hillary on the stand there, say to Hillary, would you please look at these people that you said when their bodies were taken back that you would get to the bottom of it? Would you tell them, please, what difference it makes?
You know what? I would have said to Hillary when she made that comment, I would have said, well, you know what, Madam Secretary? Had that been Chelsea sitting there, how would you feel then? If she had been one of the victims, would you want to know the answer to what happened? Or would you just be blithely, smugly, and arrogantly not caring about the four people who died? If one of them, God forbid, was Chelsea, your own daughter. Maybe then she would answer the question. But it didn't matter to her because these were people who were strangers. Never even responded to them. 617-266-6868. Tug is next. Hey, Tug, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Hi. First of all, you from Seattle?
I'm originally from New York, sir.
Oh, okay. You on the radio in Seattle?
I'm on the radio nationally, and I'm here at WRKO periodically.
Oh, okay. Eleanor Rodham Clift is
totally consistent as long as I've seen her on these TV shows for 20 years at least, and she adopts whatever the Democratic line is. And
I agree.
So don't be surprised. But this is a standard program for the administration. When something comes up in a scandal, they withhold information and send out things in dribs and drabs and drag it on for months and months and months, and then they complain that this is old news and it's been investigated to death. And it never has, because they've never come up with the information that's necessary to do a proper job.
All right, let me ask, but I need to ask you a question here, a couple questions. Number one, isn't it the responsibility of the Commander-in-Chief to protect American personnel on American soil in a foreign country, on sovereign territory like the Benghazi mission? Isn't that his job to protect them?
Absolutely, but it's also Hillary Clinton's job. They have a diplomatic protection service that is supposed to protect all these outposts.
Right, but the Commander-in-Chief, ultimately, she works for him. So then the other question is, Leon Panetta, at the time Secretary of Defense, said publicly, and I think he said it so that people would understand, that Barack Obama, on the night of the attack, was at the meeting of the National Security Advisors for somewhere around 15 minutes to a half hour. And then he went to bed, and then he went to Las Vegas to raise money the next day for the Democrats. Isn't that something that's called dereliction of duty as Commander-in-Chief?
Absolutely, absolutely. And they said that this was an opportunistic attack, but they were watching it online real time from drones and cameras in the outposts there, and they knew damn well that it was an organized attack with heavy weapons.
Congressman Issa had the emails showing that they sent, and Fox News Channel showed the emails from that mission at the time the attack was happening back to the CIA and to the administration and to the White House. They were telling them this is a terrorist attack. Absolutely. And by the way, the general who was there, who testified, said he knew that night it was a terrorist attack. It wasn't an anti-Muslim video. They conjured that up. And so why shouldn't we investigate and hold this administration accountable? In my opinion, if you took it to the nth degree and you wanted to properly investigate this, these are impeachable offenses. That's my view of it.
I agree with you 100%.
I appreciate the call, sir. I don't care what his party is, by the way. It doesn't matter. If this had been George W. Bush doing these dastardly things, Eleanor Clift would be screaming for his head. Same things. Bob, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Good, sir.
Good. I think you hit the nail right on the head. I can remember when we lost young JFK. We had the United States Navy out looking for the plane, his body, his wife at the time, and the girlfriend that was with them. When you're the low man on the totem pole, you're just a statistic. They don't care who they lose. All they care about is their future in their own hindquarters.
God forbid, had that been Chelsea, Hillary Clinton would have been all over it.
You bet your life. If it was my son who spent 9 years in the military when all this nonsense started over in Iraq, he would just be another number. Okay.
And that's what's sad about this.
My heart would have been destroyed. My life would have been destroyed. I'd have been out of my mind. They don't care about people like me. I'm a working stiff. I've been working since I'm 16 years old, contributing to this system. I paid into the Social Security system for 46 years to contribute to this country. Never missed a day's work in my life. Okay, but they wouldn't care about me. They wouldn't care about my son. My son would be some statistic. That's exactly what he would be.
Somebody explain to me, if you could, if you or anybody else, Bob, why what Barack Obama did and did not do, just sitting back doing nothing, why that's not criminal negligence in terms of his responsibility as Commander-in-Chief.
The man is incompetent. He has no business being in that position. He's going to go down in history as the worst president in history.
Maybe Warren G. Harding is the other one. I appreciate it, and I thank you, sir. Good to talk to you, Bob. Thank you very much. Paul, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Hey, Mike. I just wanted to know if there's any substance to the rumors about, the cover-up not just being about the upcoming election, but also about the arms that were being that they had supplied to the Libyans, Al-Qaeda in Libya.
Yeah, I've heard that rumor.
Trying to buy back, and that that's another reason that they were trying to keep the whole story hush, because it was, it was an illegal operation.
Well, let me tell you something. If you want to really get down to that, there were clearly documented reports that there were Al-Qaeda-connected groups who were supposed to be protecting that Benghazi mission. they were actually officially, according to the reports I saw, given the authority to protect that mission. These are al-Qaeda connected groups.
Yep.
So what you're talking about there is maybe well be part of it. That if they ever find that out, can you imagine if that were to go public and official?
Yeah, I know. A lot of people eat crow.
Now let me ask you that: if that were found, how long would Barack Obama stay in office?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, are they gonna? You want to go through the whole impeachment process with just a couple years left? Yeah, in principle, maybe, yeah, but I don't know.
Well, the truth is, for the Republicans, maybe it's better he stays there.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna look like, villains and get played up by the press.
That's a good point.
Leading up to 2016, if they go for his throat.
You're right about that, Paul. And you raise an important point, because that was reported, and I thank you for calling. That actually was reported that al-Qaeda groups were being paid and given arms to protect our Benghazi mission. Howie is next. Howie, you're on with Mike Siegel at WRKO for Jeff Kuhner. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good, sir.
I'm going to try to stay calm, but the first, they were murdered, and they were murdered by inactivity and just, it's on the heads of Hillary. But let me just add one comment. For several years ago, I spent time in Russia. And we always hear about the Russian oligarchs. Unfortunately, Mike, I think Washington is turning into an oligarchy between the conveniences, between the politicians, the media, and so forth. Big media, big politics. Nobody cares about the public. Nobody cares about people serving our country overseas. It's all about themselves. And Mrs. Cliff's comment was so disdainful to my ears. It's disgusting, and we're heading, unless we really wake up, and in 2014 and 2016, who knows where we're heading. That's all I have to say.
I appreciate it, and I thank you, Howie, very much, and it's well said. It's unfortunate to have to hear that kind of despair in a listener's voice, but that's where we are. But we got to keep battling and fighting the battle and find the candidates that will turn this country in the direction it should be going. Number to Boston is 617-266-6868. We've got a line, and the bottom line is really, should we be having this Benghazi hearing? Aren't there the questions that I raised a moment ago that need to be answered and that have never been answered? Shouldn't there be condemnation if, in fact, those points are proven to be the case, that the president committed benign neglect and did nothing to protect those people from harm, and that, in effect, his inaction led to their death? Good to have you with us. Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at Boston's talk station, WRKO. Stay with us. Okay, folks, let's get right to your calls, thoughts, comments, reactions. You heard Eleanor Clift say that Ambassador Stevens died of smoke inhalation? Are you kidding me? And then his body was dragged around outside by the terrorists who did the murder? I mean, what kind of inane absurdity is that? And how do you deal with people on the left who would have the audacity, the chutzpah, to even suggest that was the case? He was murdered by terrorists, Miss Clift. Mike, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Hey, Mike. Good morning. How are you?
Pretty good, sir.
So the comments don't bother me too much, and let me tell you why. Because I feel pretty confident that the majority of Americans don't watch that garbage anyway, and the people that were watching it probably have some convoluted view of reality anyway, that which they would actually listen to that and say, oh yeah, actually I think she's got a point. So it doesn't bother me too much. She's a nut, she's an idiot, and she's just so far gone that, to be honest with you, there's not enough time. There's too many bigger issues to be worried about. And to come full circle with this Benghazi issue, John Boehner makes me nervous. Now, leading up to the government shutdown, quote unquote, he finally said, you know what? We're going to fight the Affordable Care Act. We're not going to send you a clean, quote, resolution. And he said, we're going to fight it. And I feel like this is the same thing that's happening with him. He's actually done the president a favor, I believe, that he's actually shifted the narrative away from the Affordable Care Act, away from this income inequality crap, away from all the real, true conservatives that have a chance at winning in November. I mean, between T.W. Shannon and Ben Sass and Milton Wolfe and McDaniel, down the line, there's a very good chance that in November, not only Republicans take back the Senate, but conservatives take back the Senate, and those people are going to fight Mitch McConnell. They're going to fight the John Boehners, the Eric Cantors. I think that, unfortunately, John Boehner's not on our side. He's called this committee so that the, quote, the right wing can be happy, all right, to fire up the right wing. But in reality, the amnesty, all these other things, let me say one thing. Just beware of the bouncing ball, because I feel like this is John Boehner's way of saying, you know what, here's your ball.
He's throwing you a bone.
Go play.
He's throwing you a bone. I thank you very much for calling, and that's about it. He's throwing a bone. But you know what? The American people ought to be concerned about Benghazi and what happened there. Lucy, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. A couple of things. I want to know what happened at Benghazi, but I want to know who did the murder, who did it, and why has no one been brought to justice? That's one thing that nobody really talks about. Why has no one been brought to justice? That would be number one. Number two, in terms of any senator running, whether it be Rand Paul, who I happen to like, or Cruz, or anyone, we need them in the Senate. We need somebody running who's a conservative, who's not currently in the Senate, because we need those people in the Senate. I don't know who that would be, but it would certainly not be Bush. I have a rule of thumb. No Bush, no Clinton, and no Kennedy. We don't know anyone to presidency because of a name, because of race, or because of sex. I'm really just tired of the game that's being played in Washington.
How about Scott Walker, the governor of Wisconsin?
Oh, I do like him. I like Ben Carson, too, who's a doctor.
Oh, Ben Carson would be terrific.
I just like him.
You know what? I appreciate it. How about Ben Carson and Condoleezza Rice? What a great team that would be. I like
her, too.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Lucy. Let's go to Frank at WRKO, Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner. Good morning, Frank.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good, sir.
I'd like to respond to Eleanor Cliff's comment. Eleanor, you stupid ass, along with your logic, you died of shortness of breath. Like we all will, you moron, Eleanor, you. Now that's that.
I appreciate it. Steve, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Mike. Listen, guy kind of stole my thunder a little bit. You know, we got to start calling spades spades. The Democrats are all calling the conservatives us names. It's about time we turned around and started calling them names. It's not lowering ourselves to their standards. It's fighting fire with fire. If you don't, in a public forum, if you don't have the audacity, the chutzpah to call these narcissistic, lying, manipulative, sick, twisted individuals who don't care about anybody else but themselves and their party what they are, then in fact it's going to continue, because these people are destroying our country. I'm a veteran. I swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. And you know something? I'm getting tired. That is our government. And I'm getting tired of people calling just these individuals within these temporary positions within our government structure the government, as if it's a nameless, faceless entity. Let's start putting some names and faces to the government and going after those people.
I appreciate it, and I thank you, and you're right. Stand up and be counted. The problem is Republicans don't do that. When I say Republicans, I mean, of course, the leadership. They kowtow. Ron, you're on with Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. You got about 45 seconds. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the Republicans need to get over it. You know, Obama won the election. Stop being so racist. That's all need to get together and make this one country.
Sir, is it racist when a president doesn't protect... Wait a minute, sir. How is it racist when you condemn a president for not protecting a mission that's American sovereign territory in Benghazi, Libya?
Yeah, stop the hate. As soon as Obama got in there, you didn't want him in there.
First of all, you don't know what I wanted, so let's not get into that. If he didn't do the job he was supposed to do, why shouldn't he be criticized for it? It's not about race. It's about incompetence, sir. Incompetence.
It's about race.
It's not about race. He got elected by white people, sir. White people elected him. He wouldn't have been elected without white people. Mike Siegel for Jeff Kuhner at WRKO. Your calls are next.
News at the top and bottom, talk in between.
And you and I are here to tell them that's enough.
This is AM 680 WRKO, Boston.